Martin Luther King Jr. This is the guy who helped change America, and that turned him into a target. His speeches didn't just inspire people, they organized them. They created momentum. They forced the country to look at itself in public. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, King was seen as a national force. That's when federal attention tightened. The FBI placed him under heavy surveillance, wiretapped his phones, monitored his movements, and built a file on his private life. It was strategy. The goal was pressure, leverage, and damage control. He kept moving anyway. The Montgomery bus boycott helped launch him into national fame. Birmingham turned into a televised crisis. The March on Washington made him global. Each win raised his influence, and each step raised the urgency to stop him. Even inside the civil rights movement, power struggles never disappeared. Women such as Ella Baker and Dorothy Height helped organize, mobilize, and hold the movement together. Yet their work was often minimized while male leaders took the microphone. The public saw one united machine. The reality was a movement built by many people who didn't always get credit. Then came the part that made King easier to attack. Historians have documented repeated allegations of infidelity, and the FBI used that vulnerability as fuel for smear tactics. A leader fighting for moral change became trapped in a war over his own image. He faced a government operation designed to break him quietly. The message survived. The man paid the price. Thomas Jefferson. He became America's loudest voice for freedom, while enslaved people worked his plantation every day. His words helped define the country's identity, stamped into textbooks, speeches, and national memory. And for generations, that image made him untouchable. His rise came fast. He built influence as a revolutionary thinker, then moved into the highest levels of power as Secretary of State, Vice President, and President. The image was clean, a leader who believed in rights, reason, and human dignity. The message spread across the world like proof that a new kind of nation had arrived. Behind that message, Monticello kept running like a machine. Jefferson owned enslaved people for most of his life. Their forced labor maintained his household, supported his lifestyle, and kept his plantation operating. This was the system that made his daily life possible. While Jefferson wrote about equality, men and women at Monticello lived under permanent control, with no freedom to leave, no control over their families, and no protection from being sold. Then comes the part history spent generations arguing over: Sally Hemings. Hemings was enslaved at Monticello and traveled to France in the late 1780s with Jefferson's daughter. Years later, she had children back in Virginia, and Jefferson's name followed the story for centuries. In 1998, DNA testing showed that a male from the Jefferson family line fathered at least one of Hemings' descendants, and the Thomas Jefferson Foundation later stated that the evidence strongly supports Jefferson as the father of her children. He signed the dream. Others paid for it. Mother Teresa. She became one of the most famous symbols of compassion on earth, and that reputation protected her from questions most public figures could never escape. To millions, she represented pure charity, a woman who stepped into human suffering and refused to look away. Awards, headlines, and praise followed her everywhere, turning her into a living shortcut for goodness. Her mission grew quickly. Through the missionaries of charity, she built homes for the sick and dying, cared for the poor, and expanded across the world. Donations poured in, volunteers arrived from every continent, and her image became untouchable. The story was simple, and people wanted it to stay that way. Inside her facilities, a different story was reported by critics, journalists, and former volunteers. They described overcrowded rooms, poor hygiene, and a lack of trained medical staff. Some reported that pain relief was limited even for people who were clearly suffering, and that care often focused on basic shelter and spiritual comfort rather than modern medical treatment. Observers also raised concerns about practices such as the reuse of needles and minimal sanitation, which carried serious risks, especially during eras of widespread infectious disease. The hardest part was that this wasn't happening because her organization lacked money. Her charity received enormous global support over decades, yet many facilities remained bare bones. Mother Teresa also spoke about suffering in religious terms, describing pain as something that could bring people closer to Christ. That belief shaped the environment her mission created and the choices it defended. Her defenders argue she gave dignity to people abandoned by society. Her critics argue the dignity came with preventable suffering. They found faith, they didn't find relief. Winston Churchill. When Nazi Germany threatened Europe, Churchill's leadership and speeches turned him into the man people credit with holding the line. In the popular version of history, he's the bulldog who never backed down, the hero who helped defeat Hitler. His rise was built long before World War II. He spent decades in British politics, shaped by the worldview of empire, hierarchy, and control. By the time he became prime minister in 1940, he was leading an empire that ruled millions of people who had no say in their own future. In 1943, while Britain fought for survival, Famine tore through Bengal in British-ruled India. Crops failed, disease spread, and food shortages turned into mass death. Officials in India and British administrators on the ground begged for emergency relief. The crisis grew month by month, and millions of civilians were pushed into starvation. His wartime government made decisions that kept food and shipping focused on other priorities, and historians still debate the exact share of responsibility between wartime conditions, local failures, and decisions made in London. What remains clear is that Churchill was not a distant observer. Records from the period show him making harsh, dismissive remarks about Indians, and his cabinet resisted major relief efforts until the catastrophe was already deep. By the time more help was approved, the death toll was enormous. Estimates often range around 2 to 3 million people dead from starvation and related disease. Bengal became one of the worst disasters to occur under British rule during the war years. He saved a continent. He lost a province. John F. Kennedy. He was young, charismatic, and camera-ready in a way few presidents ever were. His presidency became Camelot, a story of elegance and hope that ended in a national trauma, freezing his reputation in place. His rise was fast and carefully managed. He won a razor-thin election in 1960, stepped into the Cold War at its most dangerous, and carried himself like a man built for history. To the public, he looked disciplined, loyal, and in control. His family reinforced the image, and the White House became a stage where every photo felt deliberate. Behind that stage, he lived with a private pattern that could have destroyed him if it ever fully surfaced in real time. Biographers and historians have documented his long reputation for affairs, including during his marriage to Jacqueline Kennedy. This wasn't treated as a one-time mistake. It was a lifestyle, known inside elite circles and quietly managed to protect the presidency. The danger wasn't only moral, it was practical. Affairs create access. Access creates leverage. A president who moves carelessly in private creates openings for blackmail, exposure, and security threats, especially during the Cold War when intelligence agencies hunted weaknesses like currency. The most famous rumor connected to Kennedy involves Marilyn Monroe, though the full truth remains tangled in speculation. What is clear is that Kennedy's private behavior followed him everywhere, even while he projected a clean national image on television, a perfect image, a reckless private life. Steve Jobs. He became the face of modern innovation, and the legend is so powerful that people confuse his success with goodness. He helped turn Apple into a cultural empire, reshaped personal technology, and built products that millions treat like extensions of their identity. He didn't just sell devices, he sold meaning. From the beginning, his world ran on control. Former employees and colleagues described an intense, fear-driven environment where Jobs demanded perfection, loyalty, and obedience. He could be brilliant in a meeting, then humiliating in the next minute. People didn't just work for him, they survived him. As Apple grew, the reputation followed. Harsh management, emotional blow-ups, and a habit of treating people as replaceable parts in his vision. He kept winning anyway, and every new breakthrough made the behavior easier to excuse. Then comes the part that lands hardest, because it wasn't about business, it was about his own child. In the late 1970s, Jobs' partner Chris-Ann Brennan gave birth to their daughter Lisa. Jobs denied he was the father for years, even after a paternity test strongly supported it. During that period, he struggled financially while Jobs' wealth and influence expanded. Legal pressure eventually forced him to provide support, and Lisa later described a childhood shaped by emotional distance, denial, and rejection. Even later, when Jobs acknowledged her, the damage didn't simply disappear. The relationship remained complicated, and the story became one of the clearest examples of how far his cruelty could reach when the person in front of him couldn't fight back. He designed the future, he damaged the people. Napoleon Bonaparte. He rose as the hero of a revolution, and then built a system that revolved around himself. During his time, France had torn down its monarchy and promised a new world based on liberty and citizenship. The country needed stability, victory, and a leader who could impose order without sounding like a king. Napoleon arrived at the perfect moment. He became famous through military victories in Italy and Egypt, and his reputation exploded across France. By the late 1790s, the revolutionary government was weak, unpopular, and drowning in crisis. Napoleon didn't just win battles. He looked like the solution. In 1799, he helped overthrow the Directory during the coup of 18 Brumaire and became first consul. The title sounded temporary and responsible, like a public servant restoring calm. In reality, power was concentrating fast. Opposition voices were restricted, censorship expanded, and the government became increasingly shaped around one man's authority. Then came the moment that revealed what he truly wanted. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French at Notre Dame in Paris. He didn't accept a crown from the church. He took it with his own hands. It was a message to France and to Europe. The revolution had produced its own ruler. From there, Napoleon's wars redrew the map of Europe. His armies marched across the continent, toppling governments and installing allies and family members into power. Millions of soldiers and civilians were pulled into years of bloodshed, conscription, and collapse, all tied to the survival of his empire. France broke the crown. He rebuilt it. Alexander the Great. By the time he was in his 20s, he had taken the throne of Macedonia, united Greek forces under his leadership, and launched a campaign against the Persian Empire that would reshape the ancient world. His rise began with speed and confidence. After the assassination of his father, Philip II, Alexander secured power and crushed rebellions to keep Greece in line. In 334 BC, he crossed into Asia Minor and started stacking victories, presenting himself as a liberator of Greek cities and a king destined for something bigger than conquest. As his army pushed deeper, the strategy stayed consistent. Win fast, keep moving, and destroy resistance. In 332 BC, he reached Tyre, a heavily fortified Phoenician city that refused to surrender. The siege dragged on for months, forcing Alexander to build a massive causeway to reach the island city. When Tyre finally fell, ancient sources describe a brutal aftermath. Thousands were killed, and many more were sold into slavery. The city wasn't just captured, it was punished. Later that same year, Gaza fell after another hard siege. Ancient writers also describe severe treatment of the defeated population there, including killing and enslavement. These weren't accidents, they were signals. Alexander wanted every city ahead of him to understand the price of saying no. His empire grew from Greece to Egypt to the edges of India, and his name became synonymous with greatness. His secret sits inside the blueprint of his success: terror as a tool, slaughter as a warning, and domination as policy. His legend was written by victors. The dead didn't get a chapter.